The diner smelled like burnt coffee and desperation at 2 a.m. I wiped down the same sticky table for the third time, my fingers pruned from bleach water, my feet screaming inside worn sneakers held together with duct tape. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps, casting everything in that sickly yellow glow that made even the youngest customers look half dead. I was 23 and felt 50. "Emma, table 6 needs ketchup," Marlene barked from behind the counter, her cigarette-roughened voice cutting through the late-night silence. She didn't look up from her magazine. Some gossip rag about celebrities I'd never be able to afford to care about. "On it," I mumbled, grabbing the plastic bottle from the condiment station. Table 6 was a young mother with hollow eyes and a boy who couldn't have been more than 7. He was drawing on the paper placemat with a stubby crayon, his tongue poking out in concentration. The woman, girl, really, she looked barely older than me, stared out the window at the empty parking lot like she was looking for something. Or someone. Her hands trembled when she reached for her coffee. I'd seen that look before, in my own mirror, back when my ex used to come home with liquor on his breath and rage in his fists. Back when I'd count the tiles on the bathroom floor and wonder if this would be the night he finally went too far. "Here's your ketchup," I said softly, setting it down. "Can I get you anything else? Maybe some pie?" "It's on the house." The boy's eyes lit up. "Can we, Mama?" She shook her head, voice barely a whisper. "We can't accept—" "I insist," I interrupted gently. "Cherry or apple?" "Cherry!" the boy squealed, then immediately looked guilty, like he'd been taught that joy was something to apologize for. I smiled at him. "Cherry it is, sweetheart." I was heading back to the kitchen when the bell above the door chimed. The sound seemed to suck all the air out of the room. 3 men walked in, and everything about them screamed wrong. The first 2 were massive, their shoulders barely fitting through the doorframe. They wore dark suits that probably cost more than I made in 6 months, and their eyes scanned the diner with the cold efficiency of predators. But it was the third man who made my breath catch. He moved like liquid darkness, each step deliberate and measured. His suit was black, not the cheap black of a funeral rental, but the kind of black that absorbed light. Even from across the room, I could smell him. Expensive cologne mixed with something darker. Danger, maybe. Or power. He had the kind of face that belonged in old paintings. Sharp jawline, dark hair swept back, and eyes that seemed to catalog everything in a single glance. When those eyes landed on me, I felt pinned, like a butterfly under glass. Then they moved past me to table 6. The young mother went rigid. Her coffee cup clattered against the saucer. "No," she breathed. "No, no, no, Sarah." The dark-haired man's voice was velvet wrapped around steel. He didn't raise it. Didn't need to. The single word carried more threat than a scream. "You've been avoiding my calls." "Please," she whispered. "Please, I just need more time." "Time?" He moved closer, and I noticed how everyone else in the diner suddenly found their plates fascinating. "Your boyfriend stole from me, $500,000. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences?" The boy had stopped drawing. His crayon hovered over the placemat, his small body frozen in fear. "I didn't know," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "I swear I didn't know what Marcus was doing." "Ignorance isn't innocence," the man gestured, and one of his companions stepped forward. "You'll come with us. We'll discuss repayment terms." "No." Sarah stood abruptly, positioning herself between the men and her son. "Please, not in front of Tommy. He's just a baby." "Then you should have thought about that before you chose a thief." My body moved before my brain caught up. I stepped between them and the table, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. She said no. The silence that followed was deafening. Up close, the man was even more terrifying. He towered over me. I was 5'4" in my worn sneakers, and he had to be at least 6'3". His eyes were the color of storm clouds, and when they focused on me, I felt like I was being dissected. "Excuse me?" His voice was dangerously soft. I said, my voice cracked. I cleared my throat, forced steel into it. She said no. "So, you need to leave." One of his companions laughed, a sound like gravel in a garbage disposal. "Boss, you want me to—" The dark-haired man raised one hand, and the laughter died instantly. He studied me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "I know you're scaring a child." I gestured to Tommy, who was now crying silently, tears running down his round cheeks. "So whatever business you have, take it outside." "Emma, don't." Sarah grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in desperately. "Don't, they'll kill you." "The girl is smart," the man said, his eyes never leaving mine. "You should listen to her." "Or what?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "You'll shoot me? In front of witnesses? In front of a kid?" Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or interest. "No," he said slowly. "I wouldn't waste a bullet on someone so insignificant." The words should have stung. Instead, they made me angry. "Then leave them alone," I said. "She's not responsible for what her boyfriend did. She benefited from it. That makes her complicit. She's a victim. She's a loose end." We stared at each other, and I could feel the weight of his power pressing down on me like a physical thing. This was a man who was used to being obeyed, who probably hadn't heard the word no in years. I should have backed down, should have apologized and returned to wiping tables and pretending I hadn't seen anything, but I'd spent too much of my life being small. "Well, she's under my protection now," I said, lifting my chin. "So if you want her, you'll have to go through me." The man's eyebrow lifted fractionally. "Your protection?" "That's right." "And who exactly are you? Someone who's not afraid of you." It was a lie, of course. I was absolutely terrified. My legs felt like water, and my hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them behind my back. But he didn't need to know that. For a long moment, he just looked at me. Then, incredibly, his lips curved into something that might have been a smile. It didn't reach his eyes. "Brave," he murmured. "Or incredibly stupid. Probably both." He tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite figure out. "What's your name? Why do you care?" "Because I like to know the names of people who interest me. I'm not interested in interesting you." Too late. The air between us crackled with tension. Behind me, I could hear Sarah's ragged breathing, Tommy's muffled sobs. Marlene had disappeared into the kitchen, probably calling the cops, though I doubted they'd arrive in time to matter. "Last chance," the man said. "Step aside." "No." He sighed, and for the first time I saw something like regret cross his features. "You really should have—" The front door exploded inward. Glass rained down like deadly confetti as 4 men in masks burst in, guns drawn. I heard Marlene scream from the kitchen, heard Sarah shriek and grab Tommy, but mostly, I heard the gunshot. It happened in slow motion and at lightning speed simultaneously. I saw the masked man's finger squeeze the trigger, saw the muzzle flash, saw the bullet heading straight for Tommy's small head as Sarah tried to shield him. I didn't think. I just moved. My body slammed into Tommy and Sarah, taking them both down to the floor. I felt the impact of the bullet like a sledgehammer to my shoulder, felt the burn that spread through my entire arm and chest. The diner tilted sideways, and suddenly I was on the ground, the linoleum cold against my cheek. More gunshots, screaming, the sound of bodies hitting the floor. Then silence. I tried to breathe, but my lungs wouldn't cooperate. Something warm and wet was spreading across my chest, soaking into my uniform. My vision blurred, darkened at the edges. Someone grabbed my face, tilting it up. Storm gray eyes filled my vision. "Stay with me," the dark-haired man commanded. His voice seemed to come from very far away. "Do you hear me? Stay with me." I tried to answer, but blood bubbled past my lips instead of words. "Get the car," he barked to someone. "Now." Strong arms lifted me, cradling me against a chest that smelled like expensive cologne and gunpowder. I felt movement, heard the crunch of glass under shoes. "Why?" I heard him mutter, and I wasn't sure if he was talking to me or himself. "Why would you do that?" "Because someone had to," I wanted to say. "Because I was tired of being powerless." But the darkness was pulling me down, and I couldn't fight it anymore. The last thing I heard was his voice, rough with something that might have been fear. You don't get to die. Do you understand me? You don't get to die. Then nothing. I woke up drowning. That's what it felt like. My lungs burning, my throat raw, every breath a fight against some invisible weight pressing down on my chest. I thrashed, or tried to, but my body wouldn't cooperate. My limbs felt like they belonged to someone else, heavy and distant. She's crashing. Get the doctor now. Voices swirled around me, urgent and sharp. Hands pressed me down, gentle but firm. Something beeped frantically nearby, matching the erratic rhythm of my heart. Emma, you need to calm down. You're safe. You're going to be okay. Safe. The word seemed meaningless. Nothing had been safe in so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like. I tried to open my eyes, but even my eyelids were too heavy. The darkness pulled at me again, and this time, I let it take me. The second time I woke, it was to the smell of lavender and antiseptic. My eyes opened slowly, painfully, adjusting to soft lighting that was nothing like the harsh fluorescence of the diner. I was staring at an ornate ceiling, the kind with elaborate crown molding and what looked like hand-painted details. A crystal chandelier hung above me, its facets catching the light and scattering rainbows across cream-colored walls. This wasn't a hospital. I turned my head. A mistake. Pain lanced through my shoulder and chest, sharp enough to steal my breath. I gasped, and immediately, a figure appeared at my bedside. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a professional demeanor placed a hand on my uninjured shoulder. Easy, dear. Don't try to move too quickly. You've been through quite an ordeal. Where? My voice came out as a croak, my throat feeling like I'd swallowed sand. Where am I? You're safe, she said, which wasn't an answer. She held a glass of water to my lips, and I drank greedily. My name is Margaret. I'm a nurse. You were shot 3 days ago. Do you remember? 3 days. The memories crashed back like a tidal wave. The diner, the men in suits, Sarah and Tommy, the masked gunman. The bullet, the boy, I rasped. Tommy, is he? The child is fine, Margaret assured me. Thanks to you. You saved his life. The relief was so intense it made me dizzy. Or maybe that was the pain medication. Sarah? Also safe. Mr. Moretti made sure of it. Mr. Moretti? Margaret's expression shifted, became more guarded. The man who brought you here. He's been very concerned about your recovery. The dark-haired man. Storm-gray eyes. The way he'd looked at me right before everything went to hell. Where is here, exactly? I asked, looking around the room. It was easily twice the size of my entire apartment, furnished with antiques that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. Heavy curtains framed floor-to-ceiling windows, currently closed. A door to my right appeared to lead to a bathroom, and another straight ahead was shut. Mr. Moretti's estate, Margaret said carefully. He has an excellent medical facility here. You receive the best care possible. I need to leave. I tried to sit up, but my body screamed in protest. The pain was blinding, radiating from my shoulder through every nerve ending. You need to rest, Margaret said firmly, easing me back down. You were shot in the chest. The bullet nicked your lung and fractured your clavicle. You're lucky to be alive. Lucky. Right. My apartment, I said weakly. My job. I have rent due, and Marlene is going to fire me for missing shifts. Everything has been taken care of. The new voice made my blood run cold. He stood in the doorway, filling it completely. The man from the diner. Mr. Moretti. Up close and in better lighting, he was even more devastating. His suit today was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored to his broad shoulders and lean frame. His dark hair was slightly mussed, like he'd been running his hands through it, and there were shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't been sleeping well. Your rent has been paid for the next 6 months, he said, his voice that same velvet-wrapped steel. Your landlord has been informed you're recovering from an accident. As for your job, his expression hardened. That diner should have had better security. They're lucky I don't burn it to the ground. Margaret quietly excused herself, slipping out of the room and closing the door behind her. Suddenly, the enormous bedroom felt very small. You had no right, I said, hating how weak my voice sounded. No right to pay my bills or make decisions for me. You took a bullet that was meant for someone I was going to kill. He moved closer, each step measured and predatory. That changes things. Changes what things? He stopped at the edge of the bed, looking down at me with an expression I couldn't read. You should have died. The bullet should have killed you, but you're still here. Sorry to disappoint. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. You're not sorry. You'd do it again. He was right, and we both knew it. Why did you do it? He asked, and there was genuine curiosity in his voice. You didn't know that boy. You had no stake in what was happening. Why throw yourself in front of a bullet for a stranger? Why does it matter? Because I need to understand. He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat, his movements fluid and controlled. I've spent 15 years in this life, Emma. I've seen men kill their own brothers for money. I've seen women sell their children for drugs. I've seen loyalty bought and sold like commodities. But I have never... He leaned forward, his eyes burning into mine. Never seen someone sacrifice themselves for nothing. It wasn't for nothing. It was for a child. A child you didn't know. Does that matter? In my world? Yes. Then maybe your world is broken. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. He stared at me, and I stared back, refusing to look away even though every instinct screamed at me to lower my eyes, to submit, to make myself small. Finally he laughed, a short, sharp sound devoid of humor. Broken. Yes, I suppose it is. He stood abruptly, walked to the windows and pulled back the curtains. Sunlight flooded in, revealing manicured gardens that stretched as far as I could see. We were somewhere rural, somewhere isolated, somewhere no one would hear me scream. The thought should have terrified me. Maybe it did. But I was too tired to show it. You need to rest, he said, his back still to me. Margaret will check on you every few hours. If you need anything, I need to go home. No. You can't keep me here. He turned, and the look on his face made my breath catch. Yes, I can. That's kidnapping. That's protection. From what? From the men who tried to kill you. He crossed his arms, his stance widening slightly, a power pose, meant to intimidate. You think that was random? Those masked men weren't there for Sarah or the boy. They were there for me. And now that you've been seen with me, now that you've been brought to my home, you're a target. The words sank in slowly, like stones in water. So this is my fault? This is reality. He moved closer again, and I could smell that cologne, something dark and woodsy that probably cost more than my car. You inserted yourself into a world you don't understand. There are consequences to that. I was trying to save a child, and I'm trying to save you. The words came out harsh, almost angry. He stopped, seemed to collect himself. Do you have any idea what those men would do if they got their hands on you? Do you know what questions they'd ask about me, my operations, my weaknesses? And when you couldn't answer, because you know nothing, they'd hurt you anyway, just to send a message. My mouth went dry. What kind of man are you? The kind you should be afraid of. Then let me go. No. You can't just... I can do whatever I want, he said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. That's what power means, Emma. I could make you disappear, and no one would question it. I could buy every person you've ever known, and they'd forget you existed. I could... But you won't. He stopped mid-sentence, staring at me. You won't, I repeated, more certain now. Because if you were really that kind of monster, you wouldn't have saved me. You would have left me to bleed out on that diner floor. Maybe I just didn't want to waste the investment. Investment? His jaw tightened. You took a bullet that was meant to ruin my evening. The least I could do was ensure you survived. How thoughtful. I'm not a good man, Emma. I never said you were. We stared at each other, the air between us charged with something I couldn't name. Tension? Yes, but something else too. Something that made my skin prickle and my pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear. You need to rest, he said finally, his voice carefully neutral. We'll discuss your situation when you're stronger. There's nothing to discuss. I'm leaving as soon as I can walk. We'll see. He headed for the door, and I called after him. I don't even know your first name. He paused, his hand on the doorknob. "Dante. Dante," I repeated. Like the poet. Like the man who descended into hell and lived to tell about it. He glanced back at me, and something in his expression made my stomach flip. "Get some rest, Emma. You're going to need it." Then he was gone, the door closing with a soft click that sounded way too final. I lay there, staring at the ornate ceiling, trying to process everything. I'd been shot. I'd been brought to a Mafia boss's estate. I was apparently now a target for his enemies, and I couldn't leave. This was insane. All of it. I should have been terrified, should have been planning my escape, figuring out how to call the police, how to get help. Instead, I kept thinking about the way Dante had looked at me, like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve, like I was something precious and dangerous all at once. I closed my eyes, exhaustion pulling at me, despite the anxiety thrumming through my veins. When I opened them again, the light had changed. Hours had passed. Margaret sat in the chair by my bed, reading a book. "How long?" I asked, my voice rough. She looked up, smiled gently. "About 4 hours. How are you feeling?" "Like I got shot." "That's to be expected." "Are you hungry?" "The chef has prepared soup." "Chef. Of course this place had a chef." "I'm not really—" My stomach growled, betraying me. Margaret's smile widened. "I'll have some brought up." As she left, I noticed something on the nightstand that hadn't been there before. A vase of white roses, expensive ones, their petals perfect and unblemished. No card. But I knew who they were from. I reached out with my good hand, touched one of the petals. It was soft as silk, cool against my fingertips. 2 weeks passed in a blur of medication, physical therapy, and an isolation that felt more like captivity with each passing day. The estate was beautiful, I had to admit. Margaret gave me a tour once I could walk without gasping in pain. Sprawling grounds with gardens that looked like they belonged in a magazine, a library with more books than I'd ever seen outside of a public building, a pool house that was bigger than my entire apartment complex. Everything screamed wealth and power, and a world so far removed from mine that it might as well have been on another planet. But it was still a cage. Dante was rarely around. I'd catch glimpses of him, usually late at night, walking the grounds with men who wore guns like accessories, or early in the morning, leaving in one of several black SUVs with tinted windows. He always had at least 3 men with him, all of them moving with that same predatory awareness that said they were more than just drivers or assistants. These were killers, and their boss was the most dangerous of them all. When Dante did appear in my room, always announced by a soft knock that felt more like a courtesy than a request, he kept his distance. He'd stand by the windows or lean against the doorframe, asking about my recovery with a detached professionalism that made those first charged moments between us feel like a fever dream. "The physical therapist says you're progressing well," he said one evening, his silhouette backlit by the setting sun. He'd removed his suit jacket, his white shirt rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with lean muscle and scattered with scars that told their own stories. "I'm a fast healer," I replied, flexing my shoulder experimentally. It still hurt, but the pain was manageable now. "Does that mean I can leave?" "No." "Dante, the men who attacked the diner were part of a rival organization," he interrupted, his voice hard. "They're still looking for you. Still trying to figure out who you are and what you mean to me." "I don't mean anything to you." He turned, and even in the dim light, I could see the intensity in his eyes. "That's where you're wrong." My heart did a strange flutter. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," he said slowly, moving closer, "that you've become a complication. Sorry to inconvenience you. That's not what I said." "Then what are you saying?" He stopped at the foot of my bed, his hands gripping the footboard. "I'm saying that the fact you're alive is a problem. The fact that you're here is a problem. The fact that I can't stop thinking about why you did what you did." He cut himself off, jaw tightening. "It's all a problem. So let me go. Problem solved." "You're not listening." His voice dropped, became almost gentle. "If you leave here, they will find you. And when they do, they will hurt you in ways you cannot imagine, just to get to me. Is that what you want?" "What I want is my life back." "That life is gone." The words were brutal in their finality. The moment you stepped between me and that table, everything changed. You can't go back." I stared at him, feeling the walls closing in. "So what am I supposed to do? Stay here forever? Become your prisoner?" "You're not my prisoner. Then what am I?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy and unanswered. Finally, Dante straightened, adjusting his cuffs in a gesture that seemed more about control than necessity. "Get some rest," he said. "We'll discuss this tomorrow." "We've been saying that for 2 weeks." He paused at the door, his back to me. "I'm trying to keep you alive, Emma. Whether you believe that or not is up to you." Then he was gone, leaving me alone with my frustration and a growing sense that I was missing something important. The next morning, everything changed. I was in the library. Margaret had finally convinced Dante to let me have some freedom within the house, when I heard raised voices coming from down the hall. Men's voices, angry and sharp. I should have stayed where I was. Should have minded my own business. Instead, I moved closer, pressing myself against the wall near a partially open door. "Can't keep her here indefinitely," someone was saying. Not Dante. Someone else with a voice that sounded like gravel. "The families are asking questions. They want to know why you're protecting some nobody waitress." "She's not a nobody." Dante's voice, cold as ice. "She's a liability." The gravelly voice shot back. "And you know what we do with liabilities. Touch her, and you're dead." The certainty in those words made my breath catch. "Boss, be reasonable. You don't even know her. She's just some girl who..." "She threw herself in front of a bullet meant for a child," Dante interrupted. "When was the last time you did something that wasn't motivated by money or fear?" Silence. "That's what I thought," Dante continued. "She stays. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me personally. And if the Volkov family comes looking, let them come." I heard footsteps approaching the door and scrambled back, but not fast enough. The door swung open fully, revealing Dante and 2 other men, one middle-aged with silver at his temples, the other younger, with a scar running from his eyebrow to his cheek. All 3 of them stared at me. "Eavesdropping?" Dante's tone was unreadable. "Getting exercise," I countered. "Margaret said I should walk more." The scarred man snorted. "She's got balls, I'll give her that." "Marco," Dante said quietly. The name was a warning. Marco raised his hands in surrender. "Just making an observation, boss." Dante turned back to me, his expression carefully neutral. "We need to talk. My office. Now." It wasn't a request. His office was exactly what I'd expected. Dark wood, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and an imposing desk that probably cost more than a car. But what caught my attention was the wall of monitors showing security feeds from what had to be dozens of cameras around the property. I was definitely a prisoner, regardless of what he claimed. Dante closed the door behind us, then moved to a bar cart and poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal tumbler. He downed it in one swallow, then poured another. "How much did you hear?" he asked, his back still to me. "Enough to know that I'm a liability who's causing problems. You're not a liability." That man seemed to think so. "Marco, was it?" Dante turned, and there was something dark in his expression. "Marco thinks with his fists, not his brain. Ignore him." Kind of hard to ignore when he's probably right. I crossed my arms, immediately regretted it as pain flared in my shoulder. I heard what he said about the Volkov family. Are they the ones who attacked the diner? Dante studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Yes. They've been trying to move in on my territory for months. The attack was meant to send a message. And I got caught in the crossfire, yes." "So what happens now?" He set down his glass with a soft click. "Now, we adapt." "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, moving around his desk to stand in front of me, "that we need to make your presence here make sense. We need to give the other families, and the Volkovs, a reason why you're under my protection." My stomach dropped. What kind of reason? He was close now, close enough that I could smell his cologne again, see the flecks of darker gray in his storm cloud eyes. The kind of reason that can't be questioned. "Dante, you're scaring me." "Good, you should be scared." He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was surprisingly gentle, at odds with the tension in his body. What I'm about to propose, it's not what either of us planned, but it's the only way to keep you safe. Just tell me. He took a breath, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something like uncertainty cross his features. You need to marry me. The words didn't make sense. They bounced around in my head like loose change, refusing to settle into any kind of logical order. What? Marriage, he repeated, his voice steady now. All business. A public ceremony, witnessed by all the major families. It's the only way to make you untouchable. You're insane. I'm practical. He stepped back, giving me space to breathe. Think about it, Emma. If you're just some woman I'm protecting, you're a weakness. But if you're my wife, he gestured broadly, you become part of the organization. You become family, and family is sacred, even in this world. I can't just... I pressed my hands to my temples, trying to stop the room from spinning. This is crazy. We don't even know each other. We know enough. We don't know anything. I don't know your favorite color or your birthday or whether you like dogs or cats or... Blue. March 15th. Dogs, specifically German shepherds. He moved closer again, his voice softening. And you take your coffee black with 2 sugars. You bite your lip when you're nervous. You have a scar on your left knee from falling off a bike when you were 9. You hate peas but love carrots. Should I continue? I stared at him, speechless. How do you... I pay attention. That's creepy. That's protection. He cupped my face with one hand, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. I need to know everything about you to keep you safe. That's how this works. I don't want to get married, I whispered. I don't want you dead. The brutal honesty of it stole my breath. He wasn't trying to romance me or convince me this was some fairy tale. He was laying out facts, cold and clear. This is temporary, he continued. Once the threat passes, once the Volkovs back down or we come to terms, we can annul it. You can go back to your life, but right now, this is the only option. There has to be another way. There isn't. I pulled away from his touch, moved to the window. Outside, armed men patrolled the grounds. I could see the high walls in the distance, topped with what looked like cameras or sensors. This place was a fortress, and I was trapped inside it. What if I say no? I asked quietly. The silence stretched long enough that I turned to look at him. His expression was carefully blank. Then I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe for as long as I can, but eventually my enemies will find a way. And when they do... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. So it's marry you or die. It's marry me or live in constant danger. Always looking over your shoulder, never knowing when someone might put a bullet in your head just to hurt me. He moved to stand beside me at the window. I won't force you, Emma. The choice is yours, but I need you to understand what that choice means. I looked out at the grounds, at this gilded prison I'd somehow become part of. 2 weeks ago, my biggest worry was making rent. Now I was standing in a Mafia boss's office, being asked to marry him to stay alive. This couldn't be real. But the ache in my shoulder was real, the fear was real, and the man standing next to me, radiating barely controlled tension, was very, very real. If I agree, I said slowly, I need ground rules. I felt rather than saw him turn toward me. Go on. This is a business arrangement, nothing more. Agreed. Separate rooms. Separate lives, as much as possible. Within reason. What does that mean? It means we'll need to appear together at certain events, family dinners, public appearances. We need to sell this. He tilted his head. But your privacy will be respected otherwise. I turned to face him fully. And when this is over, when the danger passes, you walk away with enough money to start over wherever you want. New identity if you need it. New life. Clean break. You'd really let me go? Something flickered in his eyes, something that looked almost like pain. But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. Yes, he said quietly. I'd let you go. I studied his face, looking for any sign of deception. But all I saw was a man who'd built walls so high and so thick that I doubted anyone had ever truly known him. Okay, I heard myself say. I'll do it. The relief that crossed his features was subtle but unmistakable. "You're sure?" "No, but what choice do I have?" "None," he admitted. "But I appreciate the honesty. When?" 3 days. That's how long it will take to arrange everything and notify the other families." He pulled out his phone, already typing. "You'll need a dress. Margaret will take you shopping tomorrow, with security, obviously, and we'll need to—" "Dante." He looked up. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "You said I'm a complication. You could have just made me disappear, like you said." "Why go through all this trouble?" He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers still resting on his phone. "Because you're the first person in 15 years who's done something purely good. No agenda, no angle, just good." He slipped his phone back into his pocket. "And that's rare enough that it's worth protecting." Before I could respond, he headed for the door. "Get some rest. You have a busy few days ahead of you. Dante?" He paused. "What's your favorite color?" He almost smiled. "I thought you didn't care. If I'm going to marry you, even temporarily, I should probably know something about you." "Green," he said after a moment. "The color of the trees in spring. When things come back to life." Then he was gone, leaving me alone with a decision I couldn't take back and a future I couldn't begin to imagine. The wedding dress was a work of art. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my room, barely recognizing the woman staring back at me. The gown was ivory silk, simple but elegant, with delicate lace sleeves that covered my healing shoulder, and a bodice that fit like it had been painted on. Margaret had swept my hair into an intricate updo, leaving a few tendrils to frame my face, and applied makeup that made me look like someone from a magazine. I looked like a bride. I felt like a fraud. "You're beautiful," Margaret said softly from behind me. There was genuine warmth in her voice, but also sadness. She knew the truth about this arrangement. She had to. Nothing in this house happened without people knowing. "I feel like I'm playing dress-up," I admitted. "Sometimes that's all marriage is, playing a role until it becomes real." I met her eyes in the mirror. "This isn't going to become real." She didn't argue, just adjusted a curl and stepped back. "Mr. Moretti is waiting downstairs. Are you ready?" No. I wasn't ready. I'd never be ready for this, but I nodded anyway. The ceremony was held in the estate's garden, under an arch wrapped in white roses and ivy. There were maybe 50 people in attendance, all men in expensive suits, most with hard eyes and harder expressions. The families, Dante had called them. The people who needed to witness this union to make it legitimate in their world. I walked down a makeshift aisle alone. No father to give me away, no friends to smile and cry happy tears. Just me, in a borrowed dress, about to marry a man I barely knew to stay alive. Dante stood at the altar in a black tuxedo that probably cost more than my car. He looked devastating, like something out of a dark fairy tale, all sharp angles and barely contained power. His hair was slicked back, emphasizing his strong jaw and those storm-gray eyes that tracked my every movement. When I reached him, he extended his hand. I took it, and his fingers wrapped around mine with surprising gentleness. "You look beautiful," he murmured, quiet enough that only I could hear. "You look terrifying," I whispered back. His lips twitched, almost a smile. "Good." The officiant, some family friend who probably did these kinds of arrangements regularly, began speaking. The words washed over me like water, meaningless and distant. I was too focused on Dante's hand holding mine, on the weight of dozens of eyes watching us, on the surreal reality that this was actually happening. "Do you, Dante Alessandro Moretti, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." His voice was steady, certain, like he'd made 1,000 promises and kept them all. "And do you, Emma Catherine Hayes, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Dante's hand tightened around mine. Not painful, but firm, grounding. "I do," I finally managed. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Dante's eyes locked onto mine, and I saw the question there. This wasn't part of our arrangement. We'd never discussed this moment, but everyone was watching, waiting. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away. I couldn't. His lips met mine in a kiss that was surprisingly soft, almost chaste. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. But in those 3 seconds, I felt something shift, something dangerous and electric, that made my heart race for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. When he pulled back, his eyes were darker, intense. "Mrs. Moretti," he said quietly. The name felt like a brand. The reception was held in the estate's ballroom, because of course this place had a ballroom. Crystal chandeliers, a live orchestra, tables laden with food that could have fed my entire neighborhood for a month. It was excessive and ostentatious, and exactly what I'd expected from this world. I sat at the head table next to Dante, picking at food I couldn't taste, smiling at strangers who came to offer congratulations that felt more like assessments. They were measuring me, trying to figure out what game Dante was playing by marrying someone like me. I wondered the same thing. "You're doing well," Dante said quietly, his hand finding mine under the table. The gesture surprised me. We were alone at the table for the moment, everyone else dancing or socializing. He didn't need to touch me, but he did anyway. "I feel like a circus animal," I admitted. "Everyone's staring. They're curious. You're an unknown variable in a world that doesn't like unknowns. Should I be worried?" "Not while you're wearing my ring." I looked down at my left hand, at the platinum band with an emerald-cut diamond that probably cost more than I'd earn in 10 years. It felt heavy, foreign. "Dante," I said slowly, "what exactly did I just become part of?" He was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "My family has been in this business for 4 generations. We control most of the shipping and distribution in the northeastern corridor. Legitimate businesses, too. Restaurants, real estate, construction. We're not just criminals, Emma. We're an empire. An empire built on what? Drugs? Weapons? Information, mostly. And yes, occasionally things that exist in legal gray areas. But we have rules. No human trafficking, no children, no innocents." He turned to look at me. "I'm not asking you to approve of what I do. Just to understand that it's more complicated than you think. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you understand why we can't just walk away from this world. Why the Volkovs attacking me isn't just a personal grudge. It's about territory and power and things that have been brewing for decades." Before I could respond, a man approached our table. He was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. "Dante," he said, his accent thick. Russian, I thought. "Congratulations on your marriage." Every muscle in Dante's body tensed. "Victor, I wasn't sure you'd come. How could I miss such an occasion?" Victor's eyes slid to me, cold and assessing. "Your bride is lovely. So young, so innocent." The way he said innocent made my skin crawl. "Emma," Dante said, his voice carefully controlled. "This is Victor Volkov. Victor, my wife, Emma. Volkov." The name from the conversation I'd overheard. The rival family. "A pleasure," Victor said, though nothing about his expression suggested pleasure. "Tell me, Mrs. Moretti, how did you and Dante meet?" I felt Dante's hand tighten around mine under the table. A warning. "At a diner," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I was working the late shift." "A diner." Victor's smile was reptilian. "How charming. And now here you are, married to one of the most powerful men on the East Coast. Quite the upgrade." "Victor," Dante said quietly, "if you have something to say, say it. I'm simply wondering about the timing." Victor's eyes never left me. "Your marriage comes so soon after that unfortunate incident. The shooting. You were there, weren't you, Mrs. Moretti?" My blood ran cold. "She was," Dante confirmed. "She was shot protecting a child. My wife is a hero, or a pawn." Victor leaned closer, and I could smell vodka on his breath. "Tell me, did Dante explain to you what happens to pawns in our world?" "That's enough." Dante stood, and suddenly the entire room seemed to quiet. His hand moved to the small of my back, protective and possessive. You've offered your congratulations. Now leave. Victor held up his hands in mock surrender. Of course. I meant no offense. I simply wanted to meet the woman who's captured your attention so completely. He bowed slightly. Enjoy your wedding night, Mrs. Moretti. I suspect it will be educational. He walked away, and I felt like I could finally breathe again. Are you all right? Dante asked, his hand still on my back. Who was that, really? The man who ordered the hit on the diner. The man who wants me dead. He guided me toward the dance floor. And now, thanks to this marriage, the man who wants you dead too. You could have warned me. If I'd warned you, you would have been terrified, and he would have seen it. Dante pulled me into his arms as the orchestra began a waltz. You did perfectly. You showed him nothing. I showed him everything. I practically froze. You showed him strength. His hand settled on my waist, and we began to move. I'd never waltzed before, but somehow my body followed his lead automatically. He was trying to intimidate you, to make you crack, but you didn't. You looked him in the eye and held your ground. I was terrified. I know. His voice softened, but he didn't. And that's what matters. We danced in silence for a moment, and I became aware of how close we were, how his hand spanned my waist, how his body moved against mine with practiced ease, how every woman in the room was watching us with expressions ranging from envy to calculation. Why did you kiss me? I asked suddenly. At the altar. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. If I hadn't, they would have questioned the legitimacy of this marriage. Is that the only reason? His eyes met mine, and something flickered in their depths. Does it matter? I don't know. Then maybe you shouldn't ask questions you're not ready to hear the answers to. The song ended, and we separated. But I could still feel the heat of his hand on my waist, could still smell his cologne mixing with something uniquely him. This was dangerous. All of it. Not just the Volkovs or the threats, or the world I'd married into, but the way my body responded to Dante's touch, the way my heart raced when he looked at me, the way I was starting to forget this was just an arrangement. The reception lasted until midnight. By the time the last guest left, I was exhausted, emotionally, physically, completely drained. Margaret appeared to help me out of my dress, but Dante stopped her. I'll help my wife, he said, his voice carrying an edge that made Margaret nod and quickly exit. We stood in my room, which I supposed was now our room, at least for appearances, and the silence was deafening. Turn around, Dante said quietly. I did, feeling his fingers find the zipper at my back. He pulled it down slowly, carefully, his knuckles brushing against my spine. I shivered despite myself. Cold? He asked. No. The dress pulled at my feet, leaving me in just a slip. I crossed my arms over my chest, suddenly aware of how vulnerable I was. I'll sleep in the chair, Dante said, already removing his jacket. Or I can take one of the guest rooms if you prefer. The chair is fine. I didn't know why I said it. Maybe because having him nearby felt safer than being alone. Maybe because I was too tired to analyze my own motivations. I changed in the bathroom, pulling on a simple nightgown that Margaret had left out. When I emerged, Dante was sitting in the armchair by the window, his tie loosened, his shirt partially unbuttoned. He looked tired, more tired than I'd ever seen him. Thank you, I said quietly. For today, for keeping me safe. That's my job now, as your husband. Temporary husband. Right, temporary. But something in his voice made it sound like a question. I climbed into bed, pulling the covers up. Dante? Yes? Victor said something about pawns. What did he mean? Dante was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Finally he spoke, his voice heavy. In our world, wives are often used as leverage. If Victor wants to hurt me, the easiest way is through you. That's why this marriage had to be public. Had to be witnessed. Because now hurting you isn't just hurting me. It's violating sacred rules. Even Victor won't cross that line lightly. But he might cross it anyway. He might try. And then what? Dante turned to look at me, and in the dim light, His eyes looked almost black. Then I'll kill him. And anyone else who tries to touch what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have scared me. Instead, it made something low in my belly tighten. I'm not really yours, I whispered. No, he agreed, but they don't know that. And as long as they believe you are, you're safe. I closed my eyes, trying to slow my racing heart. This is insane. Yes. I should never have stepped between you and that table. Probably not. But I don't regret it. Silence. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, neither do I. I fell asleep to the sound of his breathing, to the knowledge that a dangerous man was watching over me, and to the terrifying realization that I was starting to trust him. 3 weeks into our marriage, everything fell apart. It started with a phone call. I was in the garden, reading a book Margaret had recommended, when I heard shouting from inside the house. Dante's voice, sharp and commanding, followed by the sounds of multiple people moving quickly. I set down my book and hurried inside, my heart already racing. The entrance hall was chaos. Men in suits were everywhere, checking weapons, speaking rapidly into phones. Dante stood in the center of it all, his face a mask of cold fury. "What's happening?" I asked, grabbing his arm. He turned, and for a moment I saw fear in his eyes. Actual fear. "It's Sarah and Tommy. The Volkovs took them." The world tilted. "What?" "They grabbed them from a safe house 2 hours ago, left a message." He held up his phone, and I saw a photo that made my stomach turn. Sarah and Tommy bound and gagged in what looked like a warehouse, terror in their eyes. "Why would they—" "Because of you." Dante's jaw was tight. "Because Victor knows you care about them. This is him sending a message, proving that my protection means nothing." Guilt crashed over me like a wave. This is my fault. This is Victor's fault. Dante gripped my shoulders. "Emma, listen to me. I need you to stay here. Marco and 3 others will guard you. I'm going to get them back." "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not. They took them because of me." My voice cracked. "I'm not hiding here while they're in danger. You'll be in danger if you come. I don't care." I pulled away from him. "You can order your men around all you want, but you don't own me." "Not really. And I'm not letting that little boy suffer because I took a bullet for him." Dante stared at me, and I could see the war happening behind his eyes. The need to protect me fighting against the knowledge that I wouldn't back down. "Fine," he said finally. "But you stay in the car. You don't move unless I tell you to. Understood?" "Understood. And Emma?" He cupped my face with both hands, his touch surprisingly gentle. "If something happens to me, you run. You take whatever car is available, and you drive straight to the police station on 5th Street. Ask for Detective Chen. Tell him everything. He's one of the few honest cops left. He'll protect you. Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me." "Dante?" "Promise me." I swallowed hard. "I promise." He kissed my forehead, quick, almost desperate, then turned to his men. "Let's move." The warehouse was in the industrial district, surrounded by abandoned buildings and empty lots. It was the kind of place where screams wouldn't matter, because no one was around to hear them. I sat in the back seat of Dante's SUV, wedged between 2 of his men, watching through tinted windows as he and a dozen others approached the building. They moved like shadows, silent and coordinated. This wasn't their first time doing something like this. "How long have you worked for him?" I asked the man to my left, a younger guy with kind eyes named Tony. 5 years, he said quietly. "He saved my sister from a trafficking ring. I owe him everything." "He saved your sister?" Tony nodded. "Those are his rules. No human trafficking, no hurting innocents. When he found out what was happening to her." He shook his head. "Let's just say the men responsible didn't live to regret it." I processed this new information, trying to reconcile it with everything I knew about Dante. He was a criminal, yes, a killer probably, but he had lines he wouldn't cross. The first gunshot shattered the night. Then more, a rapid staccato that made my heart jump into my throat. I pressed my face to the window, trying to see what was happening, but the men beside me pushed me down. "Stay low," Tony ordered. More gunshots, shouting, the sound of something exploding, then silence. It stretched for an eternity, and with each passing second, my chest tightened more. What if Dante was hurt? What if he was dead? What if... The SUV door flew open, and Dante appeared, carrying Tommy in his arms. The boy was crying but appeared unharmed. Behind him, Marco supported Sarah, who was limping but conscious. "Get them to the safe house," Dante ordered, passing Tommy to Tony. "Now." "Boss, your shoulder," I said now. Only then did I notice the blood soaking through Dante's shirt. He'd been shot. "You're hurt," I said, trying to get to him. But he was already closing the door. "I'm fine. Take care of them." Then he was gone, moving back toward the warehouse with the rest of his men. The drive back to the estate was tense. Sarah clung to Tommy, both of them shaking. I held Sarah's hand, trying to offer comfort, even though I was terrified myself. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying. "This is all my fault. If I hadn't gotten involved with Marcus, if I'd just..." "This isn't your fault," I told her firmly. "None of this is your fault, but they took us because of you, because you saved Tommy, and I'd do it again." I squeezed her hand. "You're safe now. That's what matters." Back at the estate, Margaret took charge, getting Sarah and Tommy settled in one of the guest rooms. I paced the entrance hall, checking my phone every 30 seconds, waiting for news about Dante. 2 hours passed, then 3. Finally, at nearly dawn, I heard vehicles approaching. I ran outside just as Dante emerged from an SUV, his face pale, his shirt dark with blood. Marco and another man supported him on either side. "He needs a doctor," Marco said. "Already called." Margaret appeared beside me. "Get him to the medical room." I followed, my hands shaking. Dante's private doctor, a stern woman in her 40s, was already setting up equipment. They got Dante onto the examination table, and she cut away his shirt, revealing a bullet wound in his shoulder. "Out," the doctor ordered. "All of you. I'm staying," I said. "Emma?" Dante tried to sit up, winced. "I'm staying," I repeated, more firmly. "He's my husband." The doctor looked between us, then sighed. "Fine. But stay out of my way." I stood in the corner, watching as she worked. The bullet had gone through cleanly, missing anything vital, but Dante had lost a lot of blood. His face was gray, his breathing shallow. "You're an idiot," I said quietly. His eyes opened, found mine. "Excuse me? You got shot going after Sarah and Tommy. You could have died, but I didn't." "You could have. Would you have preferred I left them there?" "I would have preferred you didn't get shot." "Emma." His voice was soft despite the pain. "They took innocent people to hurt me. To hurt you. I couldn't let that stand. You scared me," I whispered. "When I heard the gunshots and then nothing, I thought..." "I know." He reached for my hand with his good arm. "I'm sorry." The doctor cleared her throat. "This is very touching, but I need to finish stitching. Mrs. Moretti, if you could give us space." I reluctantly stepped back, but I didn't leave. I stayed until the doctor was finished, until Dante was bandaged and resting, until his color started to return. "He'll be fine," the doctor assured me. "He needs rest, but the wound is clean. No infection risk." After she left, I sat in the chair beside the bed. Dante's eyes were closed, but I could tell he wasn't sleeping. "I meant what I said in the car," he said quietly. "If something had happened to me, you need to go to Detective Chen." "Nothing happened to you? This time. But there will be a next time, Emma. There always is. And eventually..." He opened his eyes, looked at me. "Eventually my luck will run out. Don't say that. It's the truth. This life, it doesn't end well for people like me." "Then why do you stay in it?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because it's the only life I know. My father was in this business, his father before him. I was born into this world, and there's no leaving it. Not really. You could try. And put everyone I care about in danger? No. The only way out is death." He turned his head to look at me more fully. "Which is why you need to be ready to walk away when this is over." "When what's over?" "This arrangement between us, the marriage." Once Victor is dealt with, is he dead? I interrupted. Dante's expression hardened. Not yet. He wasn't at the warehouse, but he will be soon. And then what? You kill him, and everything goes back to normal. There is no normal in this life, Emma. There's just survival. I stood, moved to the window. Outside, the sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. It was beautiful, the kind of morning that promised new beginnings. But I wasn't sure I believed in new beginnings anymore. I don't want to leave, I said quietly. Silence. Then, what? I don't want to leave. When this is over, when Victor is dealt with, I don't want the annulment. Emma. I know what this was supposed to be, I interrupted, turning to face him. A business arrangement, protection in exchange for playing a role. But somewhere along the way, I took a breath. It stopped feeling like an arrangement. Dante sat up slowly, wincing at the movement. You don't know what you're saying. Yes, I do. You're grateful because I saved Sarah and Tommy. You're confused because of the adrenaline and fear, but you don't actually want this life. Don't tell me what I want. The words came out sharper than I intended. I'm not some fragile thing that needs to be protected from reality. I've seen what your world looks like. I've seen the violence and the danger and the moral gray areas, and I'm choosing to stay anyway. Why? He sounded almost desperate. Why would you choose this? Because... I moved closer to the bed, because when I'm with you, I don't feel invisible anymore, because you see me, really see me, in a way no one ever has, because despite everything, despite all the reasons I shouldn't, I couldn't finish. The word stuck in my throat. You what? Dante asked, his voice barely a whisper. I'm falling in love with you, I admitted. And I know that's insane and probably suicidal and definitely not part of the plan. But it's the truth. The silence that followed felt like it lasted a lifetime. Then Dante laughed, a short, broken sound. You're right. It is insane. The words hurt more than they should have. I turned away, feeling my face heat with embarrassment. Forget I said anything. Emma, wait. He tried to stand, gasped in pain. Don't. I moved to push him back down. You're going to tear your stitches. I don't care about the stitches. His good hand caught my wrist, held me in place. I care about you understanding something. Understanding what? That you're not the only one who's insane. His eyes locked onto mine, intense and burning. Do you think I normally bring people to my home? Let them see my life, my world. I've been in this business for 15 years, and I've never let anyone get this close. But you. He pulled me closer, until I was standing between his knees. You walked into my life with your impossibly brave heart and your stubborn refusal to back down, and you wrecked me. Dante. I tried to keep my distance, tried to remember this was temporary, but every time I look at you, every time you challenge me or surprise me, or just exist in my space, he cupped my face with his hand. I forget why I'm supposed to let you go. Then don't, I whispered. Don't let me go. This life will destroy you, or maybe I'll change it. That's not how it works. Then we'll figure out a new way. I covered his hand with mine, together. He studied my face for a long moment, and I could see the war happening behind his eyes. Finally, he pulled me down and kissed me. Not the chaste kiss from our wedding, but something deeper. Desperate. Like he was drowning and I was air. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. This is a terrible idea, he said. Probably. You could still walk away. I'd give you the money, the new identity. You could start over somewhere safe. I don't want safe. I want this. I want you. Even knowing what I am, what I do? I know who you are, I said firmly. You're the man who saved a child, who protects the innocent, who has lines he won't cross even in a world without rules. You're not perfect, Dante, but you're good where it counts. He closed his eyes, leaning his forehead against mine. You're going to get your heart broken, maybe. But at least I'll have actually lived first. We stayed like that for a long moment, just breathing together. Finally, Dante pulled back slightly. Okay, he said quietly. Okay? No annulment, no walking away. We do this, really do this. But Emma? His expression turned serious. If you stay, You're all in. That means understanding that my enemies become your enemies. It means accepting that some days will be dangerous. It means— I know what it means, I interrupted, and I'm choosing it anyway. I'm choosing you. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe, or hope. Then you're stuck with me. Good. He kissed me again. Slower this time. Thorough. Like he was memorizing the taste of me. When we finally broke apart, I helped him lie back down. You need to rest. Stay with me. Always. I climbed onto the bed carefully, mindful of his shoulder, and curled into his side. His good arm wrapped around me, holding me close. I love you, he said quietly into my hair. I probably have since the night you stepped between me and that table. I was just too stubborn to admit it. I love you too. Even though I'm a terrible person, you're not a terrible person. You're just complicated. He laughed, then winced. Complicated. That's one word for it. We lay there in comfortable silence as morning light filled the room. Outside, I could hear the estate coming to life. Guards changing shifts, staff beginning their day, normal sounds in a very abnormal world. But it was my world now, my choice. 3 months ago, I'd been a waitress living paycheck to paycheck, invisible to everyone around me. Now I was married to one of the most powerful men on the East Coast, living in a world I never could have imagined. It was dangerous, it was complicated, it was absolutely insane. But when Dante's arms tightened around me, when I felt his heartbeat steady beneath my palm, I knew I'd made the right choice. Sometimes the best kind of salvation comes wrapped in darkness. Sometimes love finds you in the most unlikely places. And sometimes, throwing yourself in front of a bullet leads to something worth living for. 6 months later, Viktor Volkov was found dead in a warehouse. The same warehouse where he'd held Sarah and Tommy. The official report said it was a gang war casualty. The truth was, something Dante never discussed, and I never asked. Sarah and Tommy moved into a safe house Dante owned in the suburbs, far from the life that had endangered them. Dante made sure Tommy got into a good school, that Sarah got job training, that they had everything they needed to start over. Because that was who my husband was. A man who protected the innocent, even while navigating a world built on violence and power. As for me, I learned to navigate that world too. I learned which families to trust, which to avoid, how to read the subtle power plays that happened at every dinner and gathering. I learned to be more than just Dante's wife. I became his partner, his confidant, his equal in ways that surprised both of us. It wasn't the life I'd planned. It wasn't safe or simple or normal. But it was mine. And when I woke up each morning in Dante's arms, feeling his breath against my neck, and his heart beating steady and strong, I knew I wouldn't change a single thing. Not the bullet, not the marriage, not any of it. Because sometimes, the best love stories start with a leap of faith. And mine started with a leap in front of a bullet. For a child I didn't know, in a diner that smelled like burnt coffee and desperation, it led me here, to this man, to this life.